Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call to order this meeting of the Domestic Violence Criminal Justice Response and Enhancement Advisory Council. Thank you all for joining us here today. Those of you who are here physically and those of you who are joining us on Zoom, we will do our best to run a efficient hybrid meeting this afternoon. So with that, our second item on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting on November 29th, 2023. I would entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Senator Kissel. Is there a second? Motion has been seconded by Attorney DeCara. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Okay, checking online. Oh. Does the administrator have a comment on the minutes? Okay, I just see your hand raised, so that's why I was asking. Yeah. No problem. All right, seeing no discussion, all those in favor of approval of the November 29th meeting minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain. I wasn't here.
Okay. Chairwoman Forge. I'm sorry, Chairwoman Scanlon abstains. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next, we will have a welcome and introduction of council members. We do have a few new members who have joined us in the 2 months since we last met. So actually what I'd like to do is just have everyone briefly introduce themselves, whether you're new or a returning member who's been here for the last couple of meetings. I'll start all the way over on my left with Karen. We'll go around the circle here in the room, and then I will call on people online. So thank you, Karen. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Karen Foley O'Connor, Executive Director and CEO of the Network Against Domestic Abuse, providing services to survivors and their families in North Central Connecticut.
Good afternoon, Mary Kazicki, Director with the Judicial Branch Office of Victim Services.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrea O'Connor. I'm the Family Violence Victim Advocate Program Manager for the Umbrella Center for DV Services. I supervise the court-based victim advocacy program that covers New Haven, Derby, and Milford courts.
Good afternoon. I'm Jody Tuno. I'm a director with the Judicial Branch Court Support Services Division.
Afternoon, all. CJ Forcier, Regional Manager, Judicial Branch, Family Services, overseeing the western part of the state, the family courts.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Dole. I'm a Superior Court Judge in Hartford. Good afternoon, all. Alaric Fox, Police Chief for the town of Enfield.
Good afternoon, Lieutenant Ryan Maynard, Training Academy, Connecticut State Police.
Good afternoon, Daniel Richmond. I'm a criminal investigation domestic violence instructor at the Connecticut State Police Training Academy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Gail Hardy, and I am the designee for the Chief State's Attorney.
Good afternoon, Megan Scanlon, President and CEO of the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and I am one of the co-chairs of the council.
Good afternoon. My name is May Flexer. I'm a state senator for the 29th district, which includes Thompson, Putnam, Pomfret, Killingly, Brooklyn, Canterbury, Scotland, Wyndham, and Mansfield. And I am the other co-chair of this council, and I also serve as vice chair of the Judiciary Committee in the legislature.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon, everyone. State Senator John Kissel, serving the 7th District, which is Enfield, Somers, Suffield, Windsor, Windsor-Locks, East Granby, and Ellington. And I'm also here by dint of the fact that I'm longtime ranking senator on the Judiciary Committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am State Representative Kai Belton, representing the 100th District and former employee of Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maurice Reeves. I'm the Assistant Division Director of the Criminal Justice Policy and Planning Division at OPM. I am serving on this council because we did lose Undersecretary Mark Pelka, who joined Mary's staff at OVS. She's incredibly lucky to have him. So I will be serving in the interim, but happy to work with you all during that time.
Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Turner. I'm a board member of the Board of Pardons and Paroles.
Good afternoon, Merritt LaJoy. I'm the complaint officer for the Office of the Victim Advocate.
Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Tyler, an attorney here in Hartford, Connecticut, former board member of the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence, serving as a survivor representative.
Good afternoon, Eulalia Garcia, Connecticut Department of Correction, District Administrator overseeing programs and treatment, and Commissioner Quiroz is designee here.
Good afternoon, Attorney Phyllis DeCara. I'm in private practice in Rocky Hill and was a former board member of the Prudence Crandall Center and have been involved in this organization for a number of years now.
Great, thank you very much. And now I will turn it over to the members who have joined us online. I'll call on Chief Rosado and then Captain LaRock and then William. Chief, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chief. Rob Rosado from City of Meriden.
Good afternoon, everyone. Heather LaRock. I'm a captain with the Windsor Police Department.
Good afternoon, William Anselmo. I'm co-director of domestic programs for Community Resources for Justice.
Great. Thank you all very much for those introductions. And now for item number 4 on our agenda, I will turn the meeting over to my co-chair, Chairwoman Scanlon.
Thank you. All right, so just a few housekeeping items that we have to take care of. First and foremost, the policies and procedures for subcommittee representatives. We didn't actually make that clear in our first meeting. So subcommittee members, it is perfectly acceptable for your agency to designate a staff member that may be different from the staff member that serves on the full council to serve on the subcommittee, but it does have to be an individual or an employee that would be representative of the agency. So that's all to say, nobody that's not serving on the full council can then have a representative on the subcommittee. Does that all make sense? Okay. So we needed to make sure that that was clear for procedural reasons and for Kirsten. So that was the first thing that we wanted to just bring up for everybody. So if there are questions around that in terms of who you're designating for each subcommittee, just please feel free to reach out to myself, Senator Flexer, or Dan Cargill from our staff, Jerry Wild, or Liza Andrews if there's questions. Okay. All right. Second, just another housekeeping item. So I'm sorry that I missed the last meeting. Unfortunately, I was away for a family wedding, but I was able to read the minutes. I was also able to read the articles in the Hartford Courant. The one thing I did want to remind folks on the council is we're obviously bringing together a lot of different viewpoints to tackle some really big systemic issues that I think all of us really want to do in a respectful and civil way. From at least what I've read in the paper and some of the minutes, that might have gotten a little uncivil at the last meeting. So I just want to be really clear that myself and my co-chair, Senator Flexer, are expecting there to be a certain level of professionalism amongst this council, and we'll certainly enforce that moving forward if we do see any issues with that happening. So I just wanted to make that clear. And then any questions or concerns about that? Okay, great. So on to the subcommittee reports. Law enforcement model policy is up first. Chief Fox.
All right, good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start a screen share, if we could be so kind, and then certainly making every effort to not be torturous in going through this. We're happy to walk you through the changes that our subcommittee completed.
And for
All
those
right,
on
thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, Chief Fox.
No.
For those on the council, you do have a copy of this in your packet as well.
Thank you. Our committee met on January 17th, as will likely not be anyone surprised. Dan Cargill had done the bulk of the work ahead of time for us. So again, I would publicly acknowledge his incredible assistance in getting us to this point. The changes that you are about to see are largely alteration of some public act numbers and the statutes, a little bit of fine tuning now and again, some changing of some dates, catching up on some other statutory changes. But at the conclusion, our committee voted unanimously as to these changes, so we believe that you will find them to be in order. The first page has been changed to reflect the new date. You'll see that January 2024 on the title page. Similarly, you will see on the index pages that follow simply an alteration to a revision date, January 2024, and the page numbers for the subsequent pages. The second page of the index page is where you'll see those changes reflected as well. The forward, I'm trying to multitask here. I'm keeping up on the screen share at the same time that I'm speaking to all of you. Let's see. Roman numeral 3, family violence definitions, page 3, no changes on that one. Page 4, you'll see a date change again in that upper right-hand corner, and then you will see one of the public act codified in a statute at the bottom under the definition of dominant aggressor. It's sort of the thing that, you know, this work just gets away from us. We put public act in all these documents, and at some point, someone's got to go back and copy those in, and we're grateful to Dan for having done so. Orders of protection begin on page 5. If you're working from the numbered document, you should see no changes there. All of that information was accurate as is. Continuing on onto page 6, the same. Page 7, recommended orders of protection. The phrase OPP was removed and it was written out, orders of protection. Certainly more detail is better. The first of the more substantive changes follows. It is very small in nature, but it is whether children are present or involved. There's been a great deal of attention over the last several years to the presence, the mere presence, I suppose I would say, and I don't mean to minimize it, but certainly emphasize it's the mere presence of children at domestic violence scenes and the impact these offenses have on them. You know, and that rolls out or segues into our relationship with DCF, mandated reporter obligations. So that was certainly a very positive change. You'll see that one in red on page 7. Page 8, once again, you will see similar changes with the date change, revision date in the upper right-hand corner. You will see the removal of the reference to Public Act 18-5 and a reference to 46B 38 in the middle of that page. You'll also see the inclusion of a post general notice as a hyperlink in the middle of that page. Skipping down with the page that's numbered page 9, begins with the phrase explain to the victim. There is another one of the Public Act changes, 19-189 becoming 46B 38 toward the bottom of that page. Next page is the same. There'll be one at the bottom of this page, more substantive change. It's the page that begins supervisor at the top. So you've got a date change at the top, and that's innocuous. But a good grab by Mr. Cargill at the bottom of the page. You'll see a reference there to really what is the mandate to arrest and how it's described under general considerations. Previously, it included the phrase speedy information. As you know, under the relevant statute 54-1F, law enforcement's ability to make an arrest is the ability to make the arrest is either for felony situations, speedy information situations, arrest warrants are separate than that. But what we had here was an apparent, as one read it, mandate that the arrest would be made in speedy information situations. And we know that the arrest mandate is broader than that. So we removed that one piece of 54-1F, the warrantless arrest statute, and we changed it to when the police officer has probable cause, the arrest has to be made. I think that's how we were operating, but certainly the policy was perhaps lagging behind a tad, and that was a good grab and susceptible and suitable to the change. Page number 11, we see another removal of a public act number and the replacement with a statute. Page number 12, you're going to see a date change only. That's the phrase that's got the phrase, that's the page that's got the phrase jurisdiction in the middle of it. Up onto page 13 is a date change only, upper right-hand corner. Page 14. 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row. Public acts are out, statute numbers are in. Actually 5 and 6, the same thing. And that's the page that's got the phrase self-defense on the bottom, just as a cross-check to make sure you're where you want to be. So all 6 of those in totality are removal of public act and insertion of the statute number. Page 15, use of physical force in defense of premises, in defense of person, no changes there. Page 16, we had some discussion about this. It was healthy in nature. I would draw your attention toward the, this is the officer involved domestic violence incident section. So it's Roman numeral 8. You'll skip down to sworn personnel from within law enforcement agency. This is the section of the model policy that talks about the mandate that a law enforcement agency would conduct an internal affairs investigation if an officer was involved in such a situation. But there was perhaps some confusion in the way it was written, and perhaps even some confusion within our group, which lets you know that it certainly was susceptible for a change. Every police department does internal affairs investigations. Not every department has an internal affairs dedicated unit. Just like every department would do a homicide investigation, but thankfully most departments don't have a homicide unit. The way that the language was written seemed to imply, it stated, that an internal affairs investigation will be conducted during upon the conclusion of a criminal investigation if such a division exists within the law enforcement agency, causing one to potentially perceive that you would only do such an investigation if you had such a unit. And clearly that was not the intention, and clearly that was not the practice. So by removing the phrase that you see in the red, we've now made clear that that internal affairs investigation is mandatory from the largest agency to the smallest agency. And this was a good learning point even for myself working in the field, because we had folks on our committee that looked at this, and even they benefited from that explanation as to how this would work. So a relatively minor change, but one slightly more substantive in nature. Up onto page 17, date change, upper right-hand corner only. Orders of protection on page 18, no changes. Up onto page 19, domestic violence alert notification GPS program. This was a significant change. And we believe, certainly with every confidence in Mr. Cargill, that what is encapsulated now on your page 19 reflects the state of the alert notification GPS program as it exists. So we're, open to input on any of this, but certainly page 19 is an area where we needed to talk to other folks that were involved in this work, and that's what you see on page 19. Continuing on, 20, 21, 22, 23, nothing other than date changes until we get to 23. And that's the page that's going to say use or threatened use of a weapon in a family violence crime. I am scrolling to that myself as we speak for the folks that are screen sharing through Zoom. All right, so what you see here on 23 was a large update to reflect the new language that's now in 53A217, 53A217C. We also removed the old language from 2022. So there's a lot of red there, but that is at its core simply the incorporation of the public acts that altered those two statutes. And again, that's been kind of checked and double checked and triple checked. We believe that to be spot on and solid. The bottom of page 23 is the beginning of seizure of firearms from persons posing a risk to self or others. This is risk protection orders. As we all know, this is a process that was brand new within the last year or two. And there were some growing pains as we needed to figure out what it was we were doing here and how exactly this was going to work. We went back to the legislature last year and we said, here's some suggestions, here's some ways that we could use some help on this. And those changes were kindly adopted in 2389. So what you see on 23 and on to 24 is the current RPO process. And we believe, again, that accurately reflects the state of the state, so to speak. Continuing on 24 and 25, there are no specific changes on page 25. This is Roman numeral 11, federal domestic violence laws. Strike that. There's one change. The phrase sexual violence toward the bottom of page 25, which is now part of that statute, has been added. It's part of the federal statutes, but so it's been added to our model policy. Page 26 is more of the same. That's all been updated as well to reference the federal statutes. And we also removed the intentionally commits language that's no longer part of that statute. Finally, a date change on the comparison of orders of protection, which has been an incredibly useful document ever since this model policy was in its infancy years ago. This is an incredibly complex area of law, and with apologies, I don't recall who created this, even though I served on the committee at that time, but whoever did certainly deserves a thank you even to this day, because it is a very complex area. The only change that we needed to make was a change to the date, and you'll see that at the top of that document, 2024. I and the balance of my committee, certainly including Mr. Cargill, are available to answer any questions or address any concerns. Tried to hit the sweet spot between getting you what you needed and not torturing you on it. Hope I was close.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Fox. Any questions or comments? Senator Flexer.
Thank you. Your last point, Chief Fox, I could be mistaken, but I think it might have been Joe Froelich, who was Dan Cargill's predecessor, who put this chart together. If we want to give credit where credit is due, that's my recollection.
In my mind, I'm applauding for him now. If he's retired and enjoying a good life out of state, I believe.
So just going back, let me start at the beginning. I just have a couple of questions. So on page 10, can you just explain that a little bit more, the change of from upon speedy information to probable cause?
Sure. Law enforcement has the ability to make a
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for that detailed explanation. My next question is on page 19. The changes with regard to the GPS programs and the expansion of that first part. I understand, but can you just explain the new sentence with regard to the person choosing to participate and the 25-foot restricted area?
I'm going to tap in a little assistance.
Absolutely.
Hello.
Hello.
Specific, again, Senator Fletcher, the fully participate, the 25. Our survivor victim has the option of electing to fully participate, which means that person would have a device provided to them. And when it's fully charged, there would be a 25-foot zone around that person at all times. So they, in fact, become a zone. So wherever they travel, they are an exclusion zone that if the offender becomes close to that person, law enforcement is sent to the victim to protect that person's safety.
Okay, so this is just a change that reflects current practice.
Correct.
Great, thank you. And my last question is on page 23. In the middle of the page, the subsection 3 seems to be more accurate references, as I think Chief Fox, you detailed to the statutes involved. But is that same statement true for what I believe becomes a combined subsection 4 and subsection 5? Or is that different content?
I'm not sure I'm completely grasping the question. This section on, and I apologize for that. This section is the criminal possession of a firearm. And the update reflects what is now 53A 217 and 217C. The old language from 2022, which is what's been struck out, was removed. Can you help me a little more with the question beyond that?
I guess I think you're answering my question. So you're saying that all of the language here in red comes from 53A-217.
Correct. And I think with help with further understanding, what you see in 3 is what has been struck. The second 3 is what has been struck. So we're trying to simply show you, two things. We're trying to show you the renumbering and the inclusion of the good language and what has been struck out as a result. What you see here is reflective of 53A 217 and 217C as it currently exists.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
That's helpful. Okay. And those are all of my questions. Thank you very much to the committee for your great work on this update to the.
We're happy to do so.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to the committee. I did participate somewhat via email, but I was unable to attend. I think that what I'd like to just bring up, and perhaps this is something we could bring up in committee, is the timeliness of these updates to this model policy. When it first came out, it was very daunting to the police departments to all comply and make sure that they were doing everything that they need to do. It was daunting to officers because it was something new. And when we stand here 10 years later, I don't believe that's the case. I think that this is a go-to helpful document for officers to use out in the field. They can access it, but it is also included in the Red Book, which is a handbook of penal code statute very widely used by police officers. The problem with the Red Book is they're looking for those updates in September to get them in, but I'm sorry, just after October to have those updates come out in December. So perhaps we could talk about it as a committee to try to time this for 2025 to come out. So it would be in the Red Book. They have that chart. The chart is something that's often brought up to me as being a very useful document. Pending something major changing in this session, we could maybe start trying to time that so it's ready to go in October of 2025. So it's just food for thought. And thank you so much for the hard work.
I think that's a really interesting point that you bring up. And I'm sure the committee will look into that, but I would just caution that I'm not sure some of the statutory updates in terms of the accurate references could be done on that timeline, because I think the new statute sections sometimes come out in the fall. And so you might end up with a document that's referring to public acts a little longer, but that's something the committee could debate.
Any other questions or comments? No? All right, hearing none. We will go move to the next subcommittee, which is good question. Yeah, okay. Sorry, we're gonna move back to a procedural. We do have to move to vote to adopt the updates and changes to the model policy.
Yeah, second.
Any comments? Discussion? None? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Great. Thank you. All right, moving on to next subcommittee. The next subcommittee is arrest warrants and orders of protection, compliance enforcement and outcomes, and Gail Hardy is going to report out.
Thank you, Megan. This subcommittee met virtually on January 23rd, 2024. Jerry Wild and I accepted nominations to serve as co-chairs. We started off by reviewing the subcommittee's focus as it was identified by the larger council, that being the arrests, prosecution, penalties, and the monitoring for violations of restraining orders, criminal orders of protection, the processing and execution of arrest warrants, and the monitoring, compliance, enforcement, and victim notification of firearm seizure in family violence cases. Member Merritt LaJoy brought up a domestic violence arrest warrant sweep that had recently taken place in Bridgeport. And that prompted a lively discussion on how we prioritize. Okay.
Yeah, you got
it. It looked right, it didn't sound right. And expediting domestic violence review and execution of arrest warrants. We thought that it would be best to educate the members of the subcommittee and the larger council by inviting members of law enforcement to present on the process involved, from the receipt of a 911 call to arrest, prosecution, and the advocacy portion involved in domestic violence arrest. What we're trying to do is to identify the weak spots and to strengthen the process. We also discussed the data piece involved and the databases that might be a resource to determine the number of arrest warrants that are actually pending and those that are executed. Future presentations could include the firearm seizure and safety planning, and with presentations to the state police special licensing, from the state police special licensing and firearms unit, the judicial branch court ops protective order registry, and prawn. We discussed Connecticut General Statute Section 54-86E, which covers the confidentiality of identifying information pertaining to victims of certain crimes. We want to make sure that we discuss the information that is available to the victims and how the safety and protection of victims should be paramount. We discussed an incident that happened in some part of the state where the defendant actually had information concerning the confidentiality of a victim's address. We know that in different parts of the state, the process where a victim wants her address to remain confidential is handled differently. So we discussed how we could possibly make this process uniform throughout the state. Megan also mentioned that our intent may not be to focus on legislative changes, but that there may be some administrative changes that we can employ, again, just to make sure that our victims are protected and that we're all clear on the processes that are involved in arrest warrants, prosecution, and the execution of arrest warrants as it relates to this subcommittee. Our meeting, we determined that our meeting will be on the fourth Wednesday of the month from 11 to 12:30 before this larger council convenes. Our next meeting will be held on February 22nd, 2024. That completes my report.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion? That was great. Thank you. All right. Okay, for the next subcommittee, I know we've had, this subcommittee actually hasn't been able to meet yet. We had a little bit of a scheduling issue with rooms and logistics. So they, I think, are going to meet the first week of February. First full week of February is the date we're working on. So we should have more to report out at the next full meeting. That is next week. Thank you, Senator Kissel. Yeah, that is next week.
Megan, we, a lot of work has already been done to the standards. So it really is, when the subcommittee does meet, it's really going to be reviewing a brand new set of standards or updated set of standards and some of the ideas why those changes were made. So I think we're a little bit maybe farther ahead. So that's a benefit. So once we identify a date, those documents will be given to the subcommittee for review.
Thank you for that update. All right. If no other discussion, we'll move on to other business. So Senator Flexer is asking if every member of the council is signed up for a subcommittee. I do believe that most everyone here is signed up for a subcommittee. If for whatever reason you are not, you'd want to just see myself or Senator Flexer after the meeting and we can work on getting you signed up. All right, so moving right along, the next agenda item is just setting the date for the next meeting. I think the last Wednesday is actually February 28th, Gail. So I think our meeting is February 28th from 12:30 to 2 in this room. Kirsten, you'll let us know if the room changes, right? I know that will be during session, so we'll ask folks to just be flexible. We'll probably be sending out announcements if we have to move the room or potentially go virtually. We'll let everybody know with plenty of time ahead of schedule. Okay. All right, I think that's it. That's it for today's meeting. All right, we'll move to adjournment.
So moved. Thank you all very much. Oh, and if you're online and you need to sign up for a subcommittee, you can raise your hand and we'll get that from you that way.